Thank you very, very much, Honorable Member. Just a notice to the Committee of Selection. At the suspension, we will be meeting in the Dome to carry on the meeting of the Committee of Selection to deal with some urgent business. I now call on the Honorable Member, Mr. Alister Charlie. Honorable Member, Mr. Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I bring greetings to this honorable House from the people of Region 9, Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo. From my Makushi brothers and sisters, Myanmar. From my Wapishana brothers and sisters, Kaimen. And from my YY brothers and sisters, Kirawahi. Mr. Speaker, I have listened attentively to the contributions to this budget debate. And I have noted some remarks made by the opposition members. Mr. Speaker, the opposition members in this parliament tends to forget where they were, where they have failed. Thus, they forget that this government, when in opposition, reminded them that they were failing the Guyanese people. They were standing on sinking sand. Thus, they are now occupying the opposition benches because you have tremendously failed the Guyanese people. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Raphael Trotman alluded to the budget earlier this morning. It is not a cohesive budget. Mr. Speaker, I ask the Honorable Member to read
Mr. Speaker, I stand on a point of order. My colleagues in the opposition here are conducting themselves in a manner that undermines the identity of the indigenous peoples of Guyana.
Honorable Member, for the record, you should state the point of order, which section of the standing orders that is being violated. I don't consider that a point of order. Honorable Member, Mr. Charlie, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And that is the attitude of those agents over there. Disrespect to the Amerindians. 5 years. The Amerindians were disrespected, and later in my presentation, I will tell you how we were disrespected. Back to the Honorable Minister Trotman. I urge the Honorable Member to read and understand this budget presentation. And you will see that this budget is cohesive. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member from Region, the representative from Region 2 alluded to the Kumu Hydro Project. The Honorable Member needs to go to Region 9 and see if that hydro project is in operation. Mr. Speaker, I stand here to set the record straight that no such project was implemented under the APNU-AFC coalition government. The people of Region 9 was promised an airdrome at Letem Airstrip. I asked the honorable members over there, where is the project? Mr. Speaker, it's misleading when opposition members try to paint a picture that everything was bright and beautiful under their tenure in the Amerindian communities. But at the level of the village, it was a different reality. Mr. Speaker, another rebel member alluded to court. Mr. Speaker, the PPP will only go to the court when its citizens' rights are threatened. We will not waste our time and go to the court to prove 32 is more than 33. We will not do that. We stand resolute with the people of Guyana, and we are in government to protect their rights. Mr. Speaker, I, like my honorable colleagues on this side of the House who spoke before me, rise to make my contributions to this budget debate. But firstly, I want to extend my congratulations to the Honorable Minister, Bishop Gwan Edgehill, for presenting this budget that is inclusive and equitable. Mr. Speaker, appreciation is also in order for the staff of the Ministry of Finance who had worked to make this budget ready in a relatively short time frame. Mr. Speaker, before I touch on the impact of Budget 2020 on hinterland communities, please allow me to digress a little. Mr. Speaker, a national newspaper of October 1, 2019, which was then working as one of the propaganda arms of the coalition regime, was spreading wrong information under the caption, "Napi residents overjoyed about first-time water access in homes." Mr. Speaker, under the PPPC administration before the questionable coalition win at the polls in 2015, the water sector had experienced unprecedented progress and development, as focus had been placed on ensuring residents across the region, including Napi Village in Region 9, have access to safe drinking water. Residents across the region had accessed potable water in their homes as a consequence of the PPPC's government investments in strategies and methodologies, including but not limited to solar water systems, drill wells, trestles, and gravity feed systems. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government during its tenure had evidently transformed the Amerindian communities, and it's a fact, Mr. Speaker, and it is an incontrovertible fact that Amerindian development became a prioritized reality under the PPPC administration through specially designed hinterland programs. And again, Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government will continue on the progressive and development route. Budget 2020, Mr. Speaker, caters for numerous socio-economic initiatives towards the implementation in all hinterland communities, all with the intention and aim of bringing hinterland development in conjunction to the coastal development without sacrificing traditional morals and customs, thus ushering, Mr. Speaker, in qualitative changes for the well-being of all Amerindians across this country. Mr. Speaker, primarily the ultimate goal of these development projects in Budget 2020 will make the hinterland communities self-sufficient. And once again, Mr. Speaker, with self-administration under the Village Council facilitated under the umbrella of the first ever Amerindian Affairs Ministry, brought into being under the Jagan-led government of October 5th, 1992. Mr. Speaker, we shall not forget that it was then President Cherry Jagan who designated September as Amerindian Heritage Month and honored the first Guyanese Amerindian Member of Parliament, Stephen Campbell, by naming September 10th Amerindian Heritage Day. Mr. Speaker, I now turn my attention to the presidential grant. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2020 caters for the necessary funds for the presidential grant, which will significantly impact Amerindian communities. The presidential grant will allow many Amerindian villages to implement empowerment and development projects. Land titling and demarcation. The implementation of the US $10.7 million the coalition government had inherited. Once you have a constituency, let their benefits. Don't deny them, because 2020 budget is a budget for everyone. It's a budget, a plan for prosperity. With this, Mr. Speaker, I ask that the budget be supported and we move the development process from here. Our people need us. Our country needs us. You have wounded our country. It's time to rebuild what you have broken. Mr. Speaker, as I take my leave, I ask
But you have to take it now because you're now 2 minutes in excess of the 5 minutes.
that the passage of this budget be endorsed by everyone. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We have the Honorable Vincent Henry to take the floor next. I want to allow Mr. Henry to continue past 4 o'clock so that he can conclude it. So let us allow Mr. Henry to conclude his maiden presentation in the National Assembly beyond the time for the suspension. The Honorable Member, Mr. Henry,
Thank you very much,
you can make your contribution.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Guyana Action Party,
In 2015 for the land titling project should have provided, Mr. Speaker, absolute grants and certificates of title to Amerindian communities. This program in 2013 had targeted Amerindian villages, and the process would have completed by the end of 2016. But, Mr. Speaker, it came to an abrupt halt under the coalition administration. Mr. Speaker, the PPPC government under the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs, under the competent minister, Honorable Pauline Sukai, will fix it and deliver the needs of Guyana's First Peoples. Mr. Speaker, Hinterland electrification program. Hinterland communities will be provided with electricity through the Hinterland electrification program. Hinterland and coastal riverine communities will benefit once again from this under the PPPC government. Mr. Speaker, education opportunities. Amerindian communities will once again under the PPPC government be provided with the necessary infrastructure which will enable them to receive the quality of education for their development and attainment to higher education and skills development. In tertiary education and further field. Mr. Speaker, spread across the hinterland regions are approximately 250 schools, and all will benefit. Inclusive, Mr. Speaker, of Anai Secondary School, Shelton Secondary School, Sand Creek Secondary School, all in Region 9, St. Ignatius Secondary School, Paramakotoy Primary School, and the Cato Primary School in Region 8, and not forgetting Warramadong Secondary School in Region 7. Mr. Speaker, through the intervention of Budget 2020, secondary and primary education will be easily accessible as it caters for hinterland students from all remote areas as well. And this will be made possible.
2 minutes without an extension.
Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead. 2 minutes without an extension.
Mr. Speaker, social assistance. Budget 2020 caters for the National School Uniform Program, and it will aid thousands of Amerindian students. The program will positively impact students' school attendance and performance. Each student in the hinterland school will once again benefit from the PPPC government because we care initiative as a further incentive to ensure Guyana's children attend school. Mr. Speaker, Hinterland Scholarship. Budget 2020 caters for the Hinterland Scholarship Program, and it will provide academic facilitation for the furtherance of studies both at the secondary and tertiary level for all hinterland students. Mr. Speaker, transportation boost. Amerindian communities will once again benefit from the PPPC government from transportation assistance in the form of tractors, all-terrain vehicles, boats and engines, and pickups to aid in community projects. Transportation, Mr. Speaker, students will benefit to go to school, also emergencies, and among others. Mr. Speaker, road infrastructure. In order to create greater linkages between Amerindian communities and improve access to goods and services, Budget 2020 caters for sums to construct new roads and maintenance of existing ones that the coalition government neglected for 5 years. Mr. Speaker, health services. Budget 2020 will ensure Amerindians receive much needed health care. Mr. Speaker, this sector was a neglect under the coalition government, but however, the residents of the hinterland can rest assured that health services are one of the PPPC's priorities. Mr. Speaker,
Thank you very much. Can someone move
Ask-
an extension for the honorable member to conclude?
Asking kindly for 5 minutes for the honorable member to conclude his speech.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable member, you may continue to conclude.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on to mention the numerous achievements, progress, and development initiatives that will take place across the hinterland regions under the PPPC administration. Prior to elections 2020, it was evident that the coalition parties using state funds were traversing across the hinterland, distributing handouts and trying to bribe residents, using state resources in their bid for the Amerindians and hinterland residents to give them another chance at the just concluded elections. Mr. Speaker, fool us once, shame on the coalition parties. Fool us twice, shame on us. But despite their best efforts, they could not fool Guyana's first peoples a second time. We collectively voted for peace, progress, and prosperity. The PPPC, under the wise and caring leadership of our President, Dr. Irfan Ali, our Vice President, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, and our Prime Minister, Brigadier Mark Phillips. Mr. Speaker, Guyana's history is replete with stories of PNC-led electoral violence. Mr. Speaker, we have seen 5 months of political unrest in our country. And this was caused by the coalition themselves, the coalition parties themselves. Mr. Speaker, Amerindians will never forget that the coalition government established a commission of inquiry to investigate their lands, concretizing their narratives of Amerindians not being the first people to Guyana in attempt to usurp Amerindian people's land, and also labeling Amerindians as greedy and we should not benefit from the oil and gas sector, for which this coalition government over there, the opposition now, never apologized to the Amerindian nation. Mr. Speaker, it's a fact. We, Guyana's first people, laud the Budget 2020 team, protecting our people in a COVID-19 environment, strengthening democracy and the rule of law, incentivizing growth and job creation, enhancing welfare, which speaks volumes of competent and caring government from all walks of life, can now breathe a sigh of relief since this budget addresses a plan for inexorable climb to the attainment of prosperity for all who strive to achieve. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2020 will strengthen the Guyanese people's social compact and fulfill the promises of equal opportunities for all to prosper. Budget 2020 will transform our country's economy, particularly in the Amerindian and Hinterland communities, since the PPPC government, through this budget, will strengthen our social demographics by ensuring all benefit from the fruits accrued through the prudent and caring leadership of the progressive and astute administration construct. Mr. Speaker, no one can say that this budget is not a people's budget. And my presentation this afternoon proved to all that this budget is inclusive. This budget is equitable. It is a people's budget. Mr. Speaker, no one in this budget is left behind. Everyone has a bite of the pie in the 2020 budget. Even you over there, your supporters over there will benefit from 2020 budget. So speak to the budget as benefiting everyone in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, inclusive and equitable. And this is what the PPPC government is all about. It is what we believe in, regardless of one's political affiliation, regardless of race, religion, gender. Mr. Speaker, this is what the PPPC is about. And I ask the honorable members over there to come and join us as we move our country forward as one people, one nation, with one destiny. Mr. Speaker, I ask the opposition members to support this budget. You have your constituents